Hi there, and welcome back to Chamonix TV today. Do you want to know what are the things that parents struggle with the most when migrating with kids? Well, then, keep watching. Hi there, and welcome back to Chamonix TV today, where we are doing episode 115 and talking about a very special topic.
Very special.
As you can see, I have some helpers here to do the introduction for this video with me, and it's quite appropriate for them to be here because we are talking about the topic of children and migrating with children to Australia. I have a very special panel of guests to discuss the things that are the hardest when migrating with kids.
Very hard.
And it has a special focus on the school curriculum and how children fare when they have moved to Australia. But before we dive in, have you subscribed to my channel?
Do it.
There are lots more coming like this one. And I wanted to know whether you are aware of Migration Made Easy, which is the only online community that you want to belong to. If you are serious about moving to Australia and you don't want to do it solo, which can be the make or break for many people. So speed up your migration efforts to have a successful outcome. Go to chamonixtv.com.au/waitlist to sign up so that you don't miss when we will open the doors again in a short time.
You need to sign.
And doors will only be open for a limited time every year, so make sure that you are on the wait list, otherwise you might miss out. All right, let's jump into the episode. Here are the views of our panel in regards to what are the hardest things when moving to Australia with kids.
They're quite hard.
Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. We are a room full of lovely ladies who are all here to come and chat about the really important topic, and that is about migrants and children and how mum and dad actually usually don't fit in as quickly as the children do fit in most of the times. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on which way you want to look at it, we find that, we know that children are mostly the biggest reason that parents do move to Australia is to have a better future for our children. And we just wanted to bring some really experienced ladies to the table tonight so that we can, I say tonight, sorry, it's the middle of the day, so that we can just have an open and frank discussion about how children adapt, specifically from South Africa, but also generally speaking, there will be more of that coming. So I will ask Gerda to introduce herself, and then Vonne, and then Marlize, and then we will start having a great conversation. Thanks, Gerda.
Thank you for this opportunity, Chamonix. Now, my background is being a medical doctor in South Africa for 24 years, but I'm also now a qualified life coach. We live in Perth, and we came across with our 16-year-old daughter, who is at present a first-year student at university. I help migrants with the emotional survival.
Great, thank you, Gerda. Vonne?
Hi, I'm Renee Lombard. We've been in Australia for 2 years. I live in Sydney. I'm a marketing manager and I have two kids, 9 and 11, a boy and a girl. And I'm happy to, share my experience about how we settled in Australia with you.
Awesome, thanks for joining us. Marlize, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
We have been in Australia for more than 10 years. We came over with toddlers who are now teens. My job is I work as a school chaplain, so I walk alongside families from all over the world in their journeys of adoption in Australia.
Thank you. We are very excited to hear your take on it specifically as well, because yes, you deal with that adoption on a daily basis. Sometimes I'm sure very hard cases can come up, and I'm also sure on the other hand, you also have some really feel-good moments as a part of your journey of a chaplain. Thanks, ladies. So yeah, let's start off by chatting a little bit about children moving over and the ages that people do tend to come over to Australia with. well, not of the parents, but it goes hand in hand, the parents versus the children. Gerda, in your practice, what are the kind of general ages that you see migrants come over to Australia with who have children?
Chamonix, it's an interesting question. I must say, in general, if you look at the cut-off age for visas coming over to Australia, you tend to see more younger kids. But now, since Australia's opened its borders to all sorts of skill, you kind of see a lot more older parents come in, and therefore more teenagers, and also almost like in kids who are ready to leave school. So we see quite a number of teenagers coming through. And I think a teenager is a different animal. And I think this is probably one of the harder areas in for kids to come over. So we can chat a little bit about that later.
And you yourself came over with a teenager?
Yes. Our daughter was 16. And like I said, she's now a first-year uni student or university student.
That's great. And Vonne, you came over with really younger children, so primary kindy/age. Do you think that was a good age for you to come, or do you think a little bit older would have been better, or younger?
In my opinion, I think the younger, the better. And the biggest shift for me was the language barriers and overcoming that. So if you are like me, an Afrikaans family, and your child started in preschool and the kind of year one in an Afrikaans schooling environment, it does take a little bit of time to get them to do, kind of get on track from an English perspective. So I know with my daughter, she had to do English additional language. And so when the language comes, the concepts doesn't necessarily come with it, right? So I think it takes a little bit of time for them to get what the concepts mean, even though they understand the language. My son was very different. He started kindy, and he started learning sight words and everything in English. And it was a lot easier for him to find his feet in Australia's schooling system. So I think the language thing is a big thing that helps, especially kids that's not native English speakers, to find their feet quicker or a little bit more challenging, as I experienced with my kids.
Yeah, very interesting. Marlize?
But I think schools are well set up to support students and have additional programs to support families from backgrounds with speaking other languages at home, because there's so many.
And Marlize, in your role as a chaplain, is it primary school or high school that you look after mostly?
I only work in primary school. I have some experience in high school, seeing that my own two kids are there, but I work with primary school kids.
And how have you found the different ages to come over? Do you think they settle in quicker, easier when they are younger, what you're seeing at school, or with the sort of the older ages towards the end of primary school or older?
I think it's a very individual thing. I think personality plays a big role. More anxious people find it harder to adjust. And also, if your mom is anxious, then you will carry some of that. But if moms feel settled and help the kids settle in, that it doesn't matter how old they are.
Very good point.
I can build on that, definitely, Marlize. I think the emotional well-being of the parents are extremely important. Home must be a sanctuary. Home must be a safe place. Obviously, from what I'm doing, this is one of the things that I really try and address, is for the parents to obviously settle in quicker, because that is the safety net for the kids. In terms of high school kids, I can perhaps just say, obviously, we are an Afrikaans family, and our daughter was in an Afrikaans high school in Johannesburg. She was really settled. But it's very true what Marlize said, is that the schools do try and accommodate them. She obviously, they had English as a subject in South Africa, but they don't do their maths or their science necessarily in English, and the concepts are a big thing. So I can advise that, especially with the science subjects, I think it's good to try and pay a little bit more attention to the concepts in English, because the kid may know the subject, know how to do maths, but there may be a way that they address a question that the concept won't necessarily come across. And that can be a struggle in the beginning. However, the teachers are very much aware of that. And I think it's also, as a parent, your duty to communicate that to the school, saying that English is not our first language. And the moment they know that, they can make a recommendation. And obviously with the school psychologist or the person who's helping them with career guidance, there's always someone like that appointed at a school, as long as they know that, just to add a little bit of comfort to that child. The other thing is also to also realize that life is not a race. Just to take a little bit of a step back, just take a breather, take a deep breath, and just know that there will be a time of adjustment, not to hurry into this and say, my child is now 17, my child must tick this box. Just give them that little bit of space. Yes, and like I say, the schools are very supporting.
In terms of ages, it looks, my experience is that mothers with younger children find it easier to find a spot to fit in. Husbands, it seems like dad's got a job, and so he goes off and he meets people. Mom's sitting at home. When she's got little kids, she goes take them to the playground, meet up with friends, whereas mothers with kids in high school tend to be a bit isolated and find it a little bit harder to find their spot, unless they've got another way to connect. So it's up to the individual to find a spot. If you don't have little kids, find a craft group, find a church, find a community group. There's lots of volunteer opportunities. Go volunteer. You've got skills, you've got time. Integrate. I think
very, very important. Yeah, absolutely. But now I was interested about your comment around the English. Did you specifically identify that your daughter was struggling with English, or did the school mention that to you? How did you approach that?
I think we were privileged that we were an international school at that stage, so they did understand, and we were quite clear upfront to, tell the school that my child never had school in English to the extent. So they did support us with additional English language. But I want to kind of elaborate a little bit about the English thing. So interesting thing for me, and something that we need to understand is that our South African kids are quite fluent in English. So if you look at Afrikaans kids coming out of an Afrikaans schooling system, even at a high school, we are very fluent. So a lot of times schools can kind of misinterpret our fluency with understanding of concepts. So
True.
I think that is where it's super important for the mom and the kid to speak out around the conceptual understanding of things, because language, we are incredibly good and very adapted versus a lot of other immigrants. But it is that understanding which I think there's a little bit of a gap and something to look out for. And I think the second thing is, I had friends of mine that's kids came over also, kind of high school age. They actually do extremely well in school because our kids are incredibly driven. We are quite competitive as South Africans as well, which makes us really strong. And I think just to build on the point that Gerda raised, a couple of minutes ago, is around giving yourself time to settle. I think we as South Africans, we are inherently competitive. We have major striving behaviors, right? That fear of failure, fear of not making it. And we need to be careful that as a parent, you don't, and I kind of picked up, I did that with my daughter a little bit, is that we don't project our fear of failure and our striving behavior on our kids. And it puts a lot of pressure on them quite early on in the move to perform, to do well academically. And I want to really implore people, like Gerda said, is just to give your kids time to settle in a new school environment and not have this high typical Afrikaans parent or South African parent expectations around academic performance, especially in the first year or two.
Marlize, do you find that the same as well, that the parents put a lot of expectations on the children?
There are some culture groups that's more like that. People from some of the Asian countries are like that as well.
Interesting. Gerda, you wanted to say something?
Yes, and I think Marlize said Renee said something that's very important. Someone once said to me, as South Africans, we need an audience to be able to function. And this is one of the things that I just found so comforting coming over here, coming from a school where performance and achievements were really very, very high rated, but which is a South African thing. Coming here, your your kid does not have an audience. So there's a little bit of space for that in the beginning struggles. I don't want to call it a failure because it's not a failure, it's a struggle. There's not an audience judging them, and that's important to get. They do have that space. It's the parents and the teacher because they treat everything so confidential. So if there is a little bit of a struggle, there's no one watching this and there's no one commenting on that. The only thing that happens is support and acknowledgement and motivation. So you're not out there on a platform saying, where I previously got 90 for maths, I got 75 now. Oh, it's really bad. There's nothing like that. And they must also know that there's a lot of comfort in that. And it's true, you know, we are hard workers. We do get there.
I think I want to build on that. The interesting thing is we went back earlier this year in April, and I haven't really spoken to a lot of the parents that my kid were, you know, kind of were engaging with until we went back. And I think what was the big layering change for me in terms of the Australian schooling system versus like a South African schooling system is this inbuilt pressure that you get where it's prestation, you know, top 10s and academic colors and all these things that build in to drive academic performance, but it actually puts a hell of a lot of pressure on the kids. And I think what was quite glaring for me is if I look at how relaxed and how my kid were just able to be in the Australian system versus in the South African system, it was always who gets the book awards, who gets the, you know, kind of top 10, who gets paraded at the end of the year as the top academic students or the top cultural students, because that doesn't generally happen in the Australian schooling system. And I felt that my kid had it was safer for them, you know, they felt less judged in the Australian environment. And I felt like if I look at the pressure these kids in South Africa are under versus what my child is under from an academic point of view, I think they perform at the same academic level, but that feeling that you need to support or you have to get a certain mark to be somebody, I feel is a little bit more pronounced, actually a lot more pronounced in the South African environment versus the Australian environment. So that was a big change that I noticed.
Maybe we can just unpack that a tiny bit. The South African background needs that kind of stresses and needs that kind of pressure because it's not necessarily the top achiever that will get the bursary or the place in medical school, etc. And I want to immediately say that there may be a perception that education, the standard of education is not necessarily that high because we don't have those drivers or the badges or the school blazer that's full of stuff, okay? However, when we heard that we got our visa, someone said, oh, they heard the schools are really not that good in Australia. And I was like, okay. So I actually went and I looked at universities and I saw how well our universities are doing and ranked in the world in terms of Australian. And that immediately made me feel better because a university will not be accredited or deserve that place in the world if the education wasn't good enough for that. And I think that is something that needs to be said. There's a different reason why the schools are so driven in South Africa. And I understand that, though there is a lot of pressure. The accolades and the prestige, etc., plays a different role, though I think to keep the balance, it's a different story altogether and a different topic. But I don't want anyone to misjudge that as education not being at a high standard.
Absolutely. Marlize, have you seen that the people from South Africa and other cultures, that they academically really struggle? So we've spoken a little bit about the emotional adaptation. How do you find them settling in academically from other countries?
One thing that I just thought to mention was in South Africa, the school age groups, the year that you were born kind of predicts where you're going to, which year you're going to go to school to. Yeah, it's June, July. And it makes a difference for kids who are in primary school. They might be skipping a year when they are coming to Australia, being held back. So that makes a difference, just in the first period of adoption. Academically, I've not seen students from South Africa struggling. It's more the emotional side of things, adapting. Because our values are sometimes different than the Australian way of life, and our families run a little bit different from the standard of Australian families.
That's an interesting point. So what are the main differences that you find? You mention it now. I would really like to understand how that's different.
Well, coming from a traditional South African family, the family unit, there is a mom and a dad and some kids sometimes, and there's grandparents and so on. Yeah, they are more blended families. And we, as Afrikaans South Africans, follow a recipe. You marry, then have kids, settle in, and so on. Over here, the things might look different. You might have people having kids before they get married or never get married, and some people might have different fathers, so they might have 5 kids, and some of those have got different fathers. So families here look different, and family values are different.
If I can pick on that, because obviously as South Africans, many South Africans may be Christians when they come over, and we need to say something about that, because I know that's something that really concerns a lot of parents. Just from a little bit of experience, I know we're not all the same, and obviously we need to create the space for that. But I would really suggest that if you are a church-going family and you come across, especially in the beginning, in terms or for the kids' sake, maybe look in the beginning more for a South African church, if that is possible, just purely because it's a safety net. For the challenges that you have, because the similarities in the beginning can really just ground them and not confuse them. I also think it's important to know that though we are very much for integration, it's still important to keep your identity of who you are. So you can still be Gerda from South Africa in Australia and have Australian friends, but also South African friends. You don't need to change to someone else. And of course, you're going to learn to sing the anthem, and you are going to understand the informal language, knowing that a chippy is a carpenter and a sparky is an electrician, etc. But that doesn't mean that you need to give up who you are. And the Aussies really support that, and they do want you to embrace your culture. They're not going to give you resistance towards that. So I think it's important to know with your kids, they don't necessarily need to fit in. They need to find their group where they belong.
That's very true. Yes, Vonne.
Yeah, I want to build on that. So when we came over, one of the things that bugged me about myself is my accent. And when you speak to Australians, and I spoke to people with, I'm like, I'm thinking to do some accent training. And they're like, no, we love you, South Africans. We love who you are. So I think when it comes to cultural embracing South Africans, Australians love South Africans. We have a really good reputation in the country for being hard workers and good and honest people. So I think from that perspective, at least the kind of the sentiment around South Africans is really positive. And that also, if the parents have a positive sentiment about South Africans, I think that sentiment will also translate to our kids as well. I think it's a little bit challenging. We've had a couple of incidents at my kids' school where we had a couple of boisterous boys telling my daughter, you're from a trash country and things like that. And she came back and I said, do you believe that? Do you believe you come from a trash country? I said, no, we've got good people in South Africa. It's a beautiful country. We just want to give you guys opportunities. So I think when you get involved with situations where your country gets bad mouth, don't say, yeah, you know what, South Africa is a trash country and that's why we moved the country. Don't ever paint your country of origin in a bad light, because it's the identity, especially at a certain age. Your country is such a big part of the identity. So if you go and smash South Africa to pieces in front of your kid, it's going to impact their identity negatively. So I think as parents, we have a responsibility, even though we've moved from the country because of some socio-economic and political challenges, we also need to understand that there's beauty in the country and there's love there and there's family and there's groundedness. And we need to make sure that we keep that groundedness alive. So for example, language, we speak only Afrikaans in our home. And I think that's a great part of how my kids have kept their identity. So they speak English. My daughter's got an Australian accent, but they will be able to speak Afrikaans to their parents. And it's that balance about keeping your identity as South African, but also in a very effective way, integrating in an Australian environment and keeping the positivity going. So that would be one of my tips.
It's
I agree with you.
It's
Sorry,
a super,
Gerda,
sorry, Chamonix. Yeah, for the little ones specifically, it's their superpower to be able to speak that language that no one else can understand.
So my children were born in Australia. I have 4 little kids, 3, 5, 6, and 8, soon to be 3, 5, 7, and 9. And both myself and Carl, my husband, we're Afrikaans speaking, and we also speak Afrikaans at home. We speak Afrikaans to each other, and we speak Afrikaans to the children. Now, sometimes we realize that the children don't understand specifically what we might be saying. Not all the time, you know, especially when I realize I'm going to use the word that's a bit more advanced than just the normal words. And I would pause and take a moment and then repeat the same in English to them, so that they have an idea, but then I would immediately go back to Afrikaans and just continue on. So even though our children were all born in Australia, they all speak Afrikaans 100% fluently. And for me and for Carl, it's not so important that they specifically speak Afrikaans as such, although both Carl and I are Afrikaans and it's really convenient. But for us, it's really important that our children have a second language, because the way that your brain works and think when you have a second language is very different to when you only have one language. And it teaches your brain to do problem solving and think in the moment and on the spot and in the heat. And I still find myself like, now I'm thinking, oh, I just know the Afrikaans word I want to say, but I've got to think about the English word. Luckily, most of you ladies are Afrikaans, and a lot of the people watching will be Afrikaans as well. So if I get stuck, I can really use the Afrikaans. I can ask for help. But the thing is, speaking another language, a second language, makes it so much easier to then later on learn a third language. And as I said, it helps a lot with problem solving. So for those parents who might be wondering, oh, will my children lose Afrikaans or not? I think that choice rests with the parents. It's really up to you on how much you want to invest in your children, either learning Afrikaans or keeping Afrikaans going. I have several friends whose children have come over being only Afrikaans and now speak hardly any Afrikaans. And then I have friends who, like Vonne, you guys, where you came over Afrikaans and they still speak fluently Afrikaans. And then there are people like me whose children were born in Australia and they speak fluently Afrikaans. So it's really up to the parents. But the children, yes, they think it's a superpower that they have. And they're especially really excited when there are other kids at school. Initially, they might be a bit shy and aware. I'm like, oh, because I sound different to my friends. But then later on, they start realizing that, yes, this is pretty cool, because I have a friend who's Italian and he can speak Italian. So I can now actually stand up in my classroom and go, I speak another language as well. And for the children, they start actually appreciating that. And then there comes a time, I'm sure when they're a little bit older, and Gerda, you might say this to me, where they really appreciate, because they can then speak to mama and papa in the shops or somewhere where other people wouldn't necessarily understand what they're saying. So it's really handy to have another language. That said, in Australia, we have so many South Africans. You must be very careful not to think that people won't understand you in the shops, because especially, I know in Perth, there's a lot of South Africans all over Australia. But the number of times I've walked in shopping centres in Perth or on the streets and heard Afrikaans, and next to me is, you cannot just say something in Afrikaans and think people won't necessarily understand you.
But it's also a wonderful way to make friends. I remember we were on the beach and it was a dark beach and we were walking back and obviously chatting as a family to each other. And there were people walking behind us and I was tapped on the shoulder and say, "Ons hoor julle praat die taal." And then obviously afterwards we had a braai and it became a very nice friendship. So yeah, it attracts.
It does. It's definitely an icebreaker. And as you mentioned earlier, Gerda, it's important for those people who are concerned at the beginning and perhaps that their children or maybe husband or wife or somebody in the immediate family might struggle a little bit more to adapt, that they do consider starting off on an easier way by coming to Australia and then connecting to the South African groups in Australia. But there might be people who go, you know what, I just want to totally fully embrace the Australian culture when we come over. So and people are different. I think Marlize, you've also mentioned it. We're all different and we have different ways in how we adapt. Marlize, I wanted to just touch a little bit upon the differences between the public schooling system and the private schooling system. Would you mind giving us a rundown, just a broad explanation of what the difference is in Australia between the two?
So according to my knowledge, most of the private schools are get additional funding from their churches. So it's either the Catholic Church or the Uniting Church and so on. So they have got chaplains that are ministers, could be ministers in churches. They sometimes have a church that's attached to those schools. And their values are often based on Christian values. They might have assemblies that looks much assembly like a little service where we speak about God and things, where the public schools don't have that. Some of the public schools do have chaplains, and it could be most of us are chaplains, are Christians in public schools. But as a chaplain in a public school, I can only speak about God when a student or a teacher or parent brings this up, talks about God first. So if you are concerned about Christian values and wanting to provide that safety net around your children, that's a good option. It's the private schools tend to be smaller. What other differences in terms of academic standards? I think it's on par. I think it's the same. I think that would be the basic things from my point of view.
Vonne?
Yeah, I think my kids, I can give a little bit of elaboration. So our kid is in a Catholic schooling system. So we came over on a 480 visa. We're still on a 480 visa. So we haven't translated into PR yet. So a couple of things, tips is that in New South Wales, if you go into the public schooling system, it costs you about $5,500 to $6,000 per child per year. Because PR it's free, but when you are not on a permanent visa, then it's a different situation. So for my two kids, it would have been $12,000 a year. When we went to the Catholic schooling system, which is by accident because of the catchment area of our school, we had a closed Catholic school. It was $5,500 for both kids for the year. So there was actually a cost benefit putting our kids in a private schooling system. The benefit is it was 100 kids in the school. So I think that shock about going into a massive school is not as big. And they're usually quite close to your area. So my kids' school is 5 minutes from. So the pastoral care in these Catholic schools are also really great. And because it's small, your kid is known by name, by the lady at the admin block, by all the teachers know your kids. So I think that system really worked well for us. And being very staunch Christians ourselves, even if it's in a Catholic school system, my kid has Sunday school basically every day. And my kid's understanding of Christianity has evolved beyond even in a South African schooling context. So I think for me, it was just an absolutely amazing move. I think we do need to work a little bit because we're not Catholic. And there is a little bit initially when my kids came, it's like, but you're not Christian. And my daughter said, I'm not Catholic, but we all believe in the same God, so we had to really work hard in the background to understand and kind of educate our kids about how religions play out and that we all ultimately believe in the same God. The way that we believe is just a little bit different. So we had to do a little bit of kind of pastoral care or, kind of coaching and guidance from that side. But I think from our side, we were very happy. I mean, we know people that's in the public schooling system that's incredibly happy with the public schooling system as well. I think the tricky thing that you just need to understand is there is dynamics at play in public schools, especially in a high school, depending on your catchment area. So I know a lot of parents are concerned, especially at a high school level, that certain areas might not have kids that is necessarily kids that you want to mix, or high proportion of kids in troubled areas and things like that. So I think you need to suss out your area and understand some of their dynamics, and then you can make an informed decision if you want to put your kid in a public or a private schooling system. I think when you get to high school, it's obviously a little bit more expensive, but I found that the Catholic schooling system is actually quite affordable, and what you get for what you pay is really great value for money. So yeah, that was just a little bit of context behind my experience.
It's a great point that you raised about you guys still being on a 482 and having to pay for the public schooling system, whereas normally if you're a citizen or permanent resident, you wouldn't have to pay for it. So yeah, absolutely, you've saved money by going to a private school, which is incredible.
And that's not the same for all states. I think when you in this process, I would just implore you to go and research at a state level what is the cost implications for sending your kid to school, because New South Wales might not be the same as Victoria, how they treat the visa conditions and the schooling cost. So it's not for everybody, so don't take it as gospel. You need to go and look at what is that schooling cost for your specific area where you stay.
Yeah. Gerda, how did you guys decide on where your beautiful Lisa Lee was going to go to, like which school? Because I know that you went through the high school transition.
Ours was a bit of a different situation because hubby got a job offer and we weren't actually planning on coming to Australia. And 8 weeks later, he was in Australia and she was then in year 10. Now, the challenge we had was going into year 11, the kids in Australia already made their subject choices. So we were purely led by the subjects that she wanted to take and whether there was still space available in the classroom for her. So we ended up in the biggest school in Western Australia, public school, for her to be able to have the subject choices that she preferred. But then again, I also want to say subject choices is also in a way, a selection, a natural selection of groups, because not everyone wants to do physics or chemistry or maths, etc. And then in the end, they end up with like-minded students, same interest, etc. What I also do want to say is that the subject choices in Australia is mind-blowing. I mean, at the school that she was, they cater for anything from jewelry making, photography, political science, stuff to do with the ocean. I don't even have the terminology and the knowledge to name all those subjects, but they will go out and then do marine biology it's just amazing. It just caters for almost everything on this planet. It was mind-blowing to us.
And how did she adapt in that? Sorry, Marlize, you go.
So I just wanted to tag on that. Smaller schools have limited options and they for a variety of subjects, bigger range of subjects, you might need to have a look at a bigger school. So that's one of the things. And also, if you want your kids to go to a private high school, then consider towards the end of primary school making that transition, because they don't transition well from a public school into a private school. And the other way around might also be true, not transferring well from a private school to a public school. It works a little bit different, and because it's a close-knit community, and the private schools can say yay or nay. So if you don't follow our rules, please test the door. Public schools don't always have that choice. So the boundaries within what is acceptable and not acceptable in public schools and private schools could be different. And another remark with regards to private schools, we spoke about the Catholic school, and there's lots of other private schools that's linked to Christian churches, but they don't only have Christian kids in the school. So there might be students in the school, families in the school that choose to be there but don't believe in God.
That's a very good point, because I remember our oldest son went to a Catholic school for 1 year. In his first year, I think it's called pre-kindy in Western Australia. And that's literally when they're like 4 years old. So it's very young age. But they explained to us as well that a percentage of the students in that school, they need to keep open for non-Christian children. And that's governed by law, I understand. And so, yes, so there will be Christian people in the school if it's a Christian school, but not only Christian people necessarily, and Christian different denominations from background. But you have to usually provide quite a substantial amount of evidence, and as a process of doing your application for the school, proving that you have this X, Y, or Z Christian background. We had to provide baptism certificates and a letter from the priest or the reverend. And it was quite intense. And that was for a Catholic school, but we were non-Catholic, we were just Christian. So we had to use our own Christian background to apply, which was interesting. It's interesting that we talk about this topic of religion because it is really important for most South Africans. We have that background. Most South Africans who come over are Christian, not all, but most. And I, as a Christian myself, my husband and I, he's Afrikaans as well, as I said earlier, we thought about that topic long and hard. And it's really important for parents, of course, which school you put your child in and whether it's going to be a Christian school or not. And being in Australia, there's always this sort of idea that, well, Australia is a less Christian kind of country than South Africa. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Depends on how you measure that, and whether you measure it by the number of people in church that attends church, or whether you measure it by the number of people who actively live as Christians outside of church. There's different ways to look at it. But as parents, we did consider whether we wanted to go the Christian route or not. So we had our son in his first year in a Christian school, but then after that, we put them in a public-private school. And we were, with the quality of education that we received between the private Catholic school and the public school, for us, we couldn't really see any difference at that specific age. And it was no special schools necessarily. It was just the public school in the area that we lived in, and it worked really well for us. We subsequently decided to put our children in a private school again, but we wanted to change curriculum. So we didn't want to change specifically public versus private. That wasn't our intention. We wanted to go down a different curriculum, a different way of thinking. And so we took our children out and put them in a school which is not a Christian school. But again, this whole Christianity and wondering, but will my child then have the Christian support they need or not? We decided for us, ultimately, if we as Christian parents show the example of what it is to be a Christian, then our children will follow suit. Well, you can't force anybody, and Christianity is something that you decide ultimately, but they will have the example from mum and dad. And also we go to church, and there is the Sunday school, and there is that option. So definitely, you definitely have choices of having your child, keeping them in a Christian environment. Even if they might be Christian, you could still definitely have that option. I just wanted to raise the point, because I know South Africans often think that the only way to do it is to keep your children in a Christian school. And
I just think on Christianity, and it's the way that Christianity is approached in South Africa versus other countries might be different, right? And I think South Africa, we almost have, and I hope I don't say the wrong thing, but quite a constrained way of looking at religion, right? It's the Inge way or that Forum de Kerk way, and so we have this view around almost like a fit into my view of Christianity and my view of approaching a religion. And I think one of the things that you as a parent and you as a child, that you need to prepare your child, is how to approach questions around Christianity and the religion when you're in a country that is not as kind of one track. I would say South Africa, and I don't say South Africa is wrong or right. I think it's just the way that we practice it in South Africa. And an example of that is, I think my daughter asked at a stage like, so if you are another region, are you going to hell? Or are you, because if you're Christian, you go to heaven, right? And we're quite black and white in the way we sometimes practice religion in South Africa, because everybody is quite religious in South Africa. Or we're actually a very religious country. And I think the key that I went to set my kid is that we don't know what God's, God is the ultimate judge, and we as human beings, we can't play judgment on people's lives. And so we don't know, one day we're going to get there. We might have all believed in the same God. So I think we need to open us as parents, our mind around religion, and not enforce our strict way of viewing religion onto our kids, because it's going to make it very difficult for them to live in an environment where you sit with a lot of immigrants. You've got Hindu people. We were from Singapore, where Buddhism was quite big. So there's so many religions, and we need to understand. You need to give your kid the tool to understand that this is what I believe, and what I believe is what I believe, right? It's not wrong or right, but we can't judge other people for believing differently, and giving them that tool to be able to look at religion in a more holistic way. And I think sometimes you as a parent need to dig deep on that yourself, because you need to change the way that you think about religion sometimes, so that you can empower your kids to navigate an environment where it isn't the same as home, but can still keep your faith in the way that works in an Australian context. So I think what has given my daughter is incredible insight into people, and incredible empathy and other people's religion, and not be just mental around religion, right? But embracing towards other people's value systems, and understanding where we have commonalities with other kids, as opposed to look at where we have differences in the way that we approach religion, but still be quite sure about what I believe and why I believe what I believe, but also be open to other people. So that was one of the biggest learnings and things that I would implore parents coming over to give their kids, is not to look at it in a black and white way.
If I may just say something and go in a different direction, I think a good tip that worked for us is to encourage bravery, and tell your kids, this is a new adventure, but we are brave and we've got grit. So what I used to do is say to my daughter, okay, and this is extremes, but it worked for us, and obviously we're all different. I would say to her, okay, we're going to try this 6 times. Being the new kid at the hockey, or go to this new group or whatever. We're going to try this 6 times. And if it's still not working, you can say, no, I'm not going again. But in the meantime, I prayed, please let it be okay after 3 times. But just to build that grit and resilience, to know not to just give up and isolate yourself. You do have to be a little bit brave. You've got to put yourself out there. You have to tell your story. And it's important, because they will get to a stage where they may say, I'm really so tired of being the new kid. So just reinforce that from the beginning, that you will have to do that. That's part of the journey. That's part of connection, because people are interested in who you are. And it's actually a privilege when they ask you, where you from, who are you, if they're willing to hear and listen to your story of being the new kid. And in general, we find that Australians are so I want to say educated and motivated to accept new people, that we quite often sat back and look at the kids communicating with each other, like, okay, hello, I am so-and-so, so where are you from, welcome, etc. That we were amazed by the way that the average Australian kid is willing to embrace a new migrant child. And just quickly on that, migrant children get seen as 3rd generation kids. That's the terminology that's been thrown out in social media and on the internet. And there are definitely benefits to it, to being a 3rd generation kid. So if the viewers just want to go and Google a little bit on that, seeing that they're more adaptable, they're better at communication and at learning, etc., etc.
Very, very good point. Yes. Having been the generation, as in my husband and I, who moved over, remember we came with our children. One thing that I really always would like my children to know or be aware of is the journey that we had to go through to be able to be here. And we talk to our children about that very often, because it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy. Staying in South Africa, or whatever your home country, staying isn't easy, leaving isn't easy either. Both are really difficult choices. And it's 2 people, if you come as a couple, have to agree on that together. Give me a second.
Yeah, it's about choosing your hard.
Yes.
That's right. And it's important that they remember the journey, because it wasn't easy. Give me a second.
Well, while you're coughing, I'll say something. How do you mentioned you choose your hard. For me, what I found helpful was to have a little bit of notes. So I printed out a few of the articles that was in the news at the time that we made our choice to immigrate, so that you always very firmly know why you did that. If you choose to stay, or if you choose to go, know why. Because in time, things in our memories fade. And when it gets tough and you question yourself, you've got that in writing. This is why, my motivation.
It's interesting that you're mentioning it, because that's the first session that I do with them, is the why, to create your why lists. And I also say to them, write it in a neat little book for you to keep, because while it's the stuff that you feed on through the dark days, then one day your kids, as Chamonix said, can look back and read through that, and that the journey, just to look back, because we actually all, I call it modern voortrekkers. There's a lot of similarity, and we make history. We must know that we're part of history making. And for our kids, like Chamonix said, to look back and read through it and to understand and to create that I almost want to say a gratitude for the sacrifices that the parents did. I think it's very relevant.
Thank you. Yes. So the reason I specifically mention the importance of children knowing that is that children need to build on, I guess, the bravery of the parents. And I don't want to lose that for our children one day. I want them to, we all want our children to have an easy life. But the resilience that we learned as parents through this journey, and how much different we approach life per se, just because we've been through that journey, it has made me so, I don't want to say harder, that's not the right word, but tougher.
Grit.
Yeah.
So I have grit now.
Resilience.
Resilience, whenever we face whatever the thing is, the fact that we were able to move countries and adapt and face all those hardships that come along with that, just make everything else after that seem, I want to say, small in comparison. And so it's just easier to continue doing other things that might be hard. Here comes my saving grace. Thank you.
So the interesting thing just on grit is it was a TEDx, or it was one of those articles I read, and they did a study to see what is one of the most determining factors of a kid's success one day in life. And the one thing that came out, it's not intelligence, it's grit. It's the ability to dig your heels in, and get the stuff done despite the challenges, overcoming challenges. So if in this process we feel sometimes guilty that, we've put our kids in a difficult situation, we've kind of uprooted them. But if they come out with the grit from that, we actually, not just from putting your kid in a country that's socioeconomically a little bit more stable and has potentially more opportunities than South Africa, but we've also emotionally given our kids the ability to build grit, an opportunity to build that, which, I think in the long term, we might not be able to qualify that, but at this point. But if you look at maybe at a collective of South Africans that's gone overseas and the successes that's achieved subsequently, those kids, the culture, or the third generation kids, we have done something for our kids to also enable that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's and again, that forms part of our history and the journey. All four of us now live in Australia. But before, when we lived in South Africa, our forefathers moved countries from Europe to South Africa. So it's not like we're the first frontiers and we're moving on. No, that's, it's in our blood. People did it before us. And Jan van Riebeeck came to Africa the first time around. So We just
I
happen
think
to move again. And
it's the hardigheid that has been inbred into us South African and the toughness, right? If you look at South Africans in general, what we've gone through, the volatility, and I'm talking about South Africans, not just from an Afrikaans cultural background, but from all backgrounds, right? We're used to a country with huge volatility. It's not easy making a life in South Africa. And we have an inbuilt grit already as South Africans. You know, we are equipped as South Africans to be able to take on these challenges, regardless of your cultural or, you know, kind of background. You know, and that I think is something that we shouldn't take for granted. We have an inbuilt toughness and ability to adapt as South Africans that not many cultures have. And our kids have the same.
I want to add
Very
to that.
true.
In this journey, you are never alone. There's lots of people around you. Just reach out. Put up your hand, pick up the phone. You don't need to walk through the dark by yourself. There's lots of people that will love on you, not just South Africans, neighbors, friends, the girl at the checkout. People are really helpful. They want you to succeed.
That is very true. Australia is used to having migrants, and it's built on migrants. And the South African culture far too often let us just, you know, it's okay. I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm just going to be standing on my own, and ek is te trots om vir iemand te sê ek sukkel. It's like, no, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Reach out. And if you don't reach out, other people won't know that you're struggling. So rather reach out and get some help way in advance. And then, I think the stat says there are 200,000 South Africans living in Australia. Okay, that's a lot. If they could do it, you can do it too. There's definitely no reason why you cannot make it over and make it over successfully.
And there's
there's no shame. That's right, Mama Lisa, I agree with you. There's no shame. But it's the South African culture where we go, oh, you know, I've now left South Africa. I have to make Australia work, and I can't share with anybody that I'm struggling through the journey. It's tough. Okay, there is no beating around the bush. It is tough, but it is possible. You can make it out on the other side. You can. And once you settle in, you find your feet, it is so pure bliss. It is just, that's my experience anyway. I don't know, maybe your ladies have a different view.
I think the big, sorry. So the one thing is, it's tough, but you need to change your mindset, right? If you come in and you say, it's going to be tough, and you tell the kids it's going to be tough, and I think it's about framing it. We know maybe there's going to be moments, right? But also see it as an adventure. You know, build in these moments of adventure for your kids, right? Like new things at school, frame it as, wow, this is an exciting new thing, or wow, we're going to go to the beach, or look, we're going to go see a koala for the first time. You have to build in this moments of excitement and adventure as part of this move. Because if you're just going to go and say, it's tough, we're going to resettle, it's just, you're going to create expectations for yourself and your family to fail. And the same thing with the schooling system, right? It's like, make sure your kids know it's not going to be the same as in South Africa. But you know what? It's a new schooling adventure. And create the positivity around the newness, as opposed to creating and framing the newness as a bad thing.
It's an adventure, and it's a privilege.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it on, because yes, it's all in the mind. It's absolutely what you make of it. So as the mum, as the dad, you can be the stronger figure. Yes, you're going to be concerned. Yes, the reason you move over mostly is for your children to be better off. Yes, most of the questions I get from people wanting to come over is like, but what about my children? Are they going to make it? Are they going to struggle? And they will be adapting long before the parents have adapted. Marlize, do you have some final words before we say goodbye?
Good luck. It's an amazing journey. And no person's journey is the same as the next. So you can read all the books and talk to all the people, but your journey will be your journey, and make it a good one.
Gerda, some final words from you?
I just always say, you know, we do have the grit, we do have the resilience. We must just put it out there, believe in ourselves, and yeah, it's a privilege.
Great. Thank you. Vonne, final last one.
Final last one is just, I know that kids are like Play-Doh. They're malleable, they're adaptable to the environment, and you know, in the right hands, which is your parents, you can create a beautiful, you know, sculpture out of your kids. So I would just say, kids are so adaptable, and don't worry. You know, they are just the most amazing creatures in terms of adapting into this new Australian environment. The key is that you need to be okay with adapting and not project your own fears on your kids so that it doesn't, you know, kind of impact the way that they experience this beautiful new adventure.
Agreed. My last words, I guess, would be make sure that you surround yourself with positive people. Stay off social media. If there's anybody that's on your Facebook feed or Instagram feed that's not feeding you in the right way that you need to be fed so that you can be strong for this journey, get rid of it. Okay, just unfollow, unfriend, whatever it is that you need to do that. Okay, because your journey to Australia is more important than them feeding you trash. All right, that's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, there will be ups and downs, but remember the ultimate goal that you are working towards. And if you can stay positive and keep on thinking about what it is, why you are doing this, why you are moving, and Gerda is really good at framing the why as well, always for our mindset consultation that she does. Remembering your why will triumph any of the struggles or the hurdles that you encounter. So yeah, thank you, ladies. It was really a great chat. I appreciate all your time. And for our viewers, if you enjoyed this, thank you so much for sticking to us or with us to the end. And let us know down in the comments below if there's anything more that would you like to hear about. If you really enjoyed this topic or specific nuances of it, if you want to hear us talk more about, I don't know, maybe just English or sport in schools or academic in schools or whatever else, please let us know in the comments down below. And yeah, it's been great to have a chat, and we will see you same time and same place next week. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'd love to hear from you. What are the hardest things that you think will be on your way when you migrate with your kids? Type it in the comments below so that we know. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it as always. If you are ready to find your dream life faster and land your Aussie job sooner, then Migration Made Easy is the place to be. Join the waitlist and you'll be the first to know when our doors open again. Go to www.chamonixtv.com.au/waitlist and remember to design the one life that you have to make it worth your while. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.
Bye. Say goodbye, country.